And I think of a couple as each having their own root system, and that would be their ancestry, right? The roots of their tree. Some of us have the bigger, better roots. Some of us have very weak roots. Our just families are new and it's easier to push us down, and we have to get fortification. We have to have even more help because we're not as strong or solid yet. And we know that's also the same with younger trees. And I think of Tolkien's quote, deep roots are not hurt or touched by the frost. And it's just the idea that we want to continue to build deep roots, not only near each other, but even intertwine some of those roots as we create family systems of our own.
Hey friends, and welcome back to this season of the Mary Morant Show. If you are just joining us, this is a season we are lovingly referring to as the underestimated season, after the title of my third book, which just released this year, called Underestimated: The Surprisingly Simple Shift to Quit Playing Small, Name the Fear, and Move Forward Anyway. So all this season, which we are officially now extending all throughout the rest of 2025, I am being joined by some amazing guests, some all-time favorite past guests, and some brand new ones as we sit down and have the deep, hard conversations you know we love around here about all the different faces of fear I cover in the book. Things like procrastination, people-pleasing, imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, second-guessing, perfectionism, and more. And today I couldn't be more excited to be joined by one of my new absolute favorite people, favorite follows, favorite authors. She's an expert on the Enneagram and marriage, Miss Christa Hardin, as we talk about understanding both our strengths and our weaknesses to show up and shine brighter, glow if you will, in the world. Christa, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Mary. I absolutely adore you and your
Same.
beautiful work in the world. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I have been going through the book and just absolutely devouring it. It is such an incredible contribution to the conversation around the Enneagram because I've read a good bit about just individual Enneagrams, but this idea of how we actually interact with this, kind of chemistry experiment we'll talk about more here in a second when we are paired up with someone in marriage, and just the light that those two, that explosion of two people can bring. So let's start right here. We talk a lot about the Enneagram on this show, but I think like if anybody has somehow missed the Enneagram, been under a rock or what have you, has not listened to a single other episode of this show. Just kidding. We don't talk about it that much, but we talk about it a lot. Just very quickly give us that overview of the 9 types so that even without taking the test, they can maybe have a guess as to what they might be.
I love that. And it gives people that refresher if they feel like they're leaning into a different type too. So
Right?
the types are labeled with numbers 1 through 9, and there's nothing hokey about it. It's a convenient way to label various personality types, really. And type
Mm.
1 is the perfectionist. The way that they move is they love to do the right and good thing, and they like order. The 2 is the giver. They are helpers from the time they're little onward. They want to make sure that the world is served through them, basically. 3s love to shine in public. They really are performers, achievers. They do a great job of goal getting. 4s are creative artists. We know this is Miss Mary. And we also know they love to go to the depths with people. And
Mm-mm.
we have our 5s, who are the researchers, inventors, investigators. You'll find them pulled back, introverting, and trying to solve Sherlock kind of crimes, and even in their friends' lives and in their own lives. 6s are your loyal skeptics. They will question everything, but they will also be troubleshooting because they love and are so loyal and they want things to go well. And they know how to plan for when they don't. Type 7s are the enthusiasts. They love to make sure that people know optimism is powerful and that experiences deliver. They also like to make sure they're running really hard, and they also are learning, hopefully, that they need a rest. We have our eights that also love living large, but they love to protect others. They have such a desire to defend and protect injustices in the world and are just very strong. And then last but not least, our nines. A lot of people fit into that nine, and I know you know a nine very well.
I
And
sure do.
we have, I think Justin is a nine, your hubby. And then we also
Uh-huh.
know that they're peacemakers. They love to make sure that in the world they are able to hold every perspective and are very thoughtful of others and are really good at making comfort in the world. So those are our
Mm.
nine types. Hopefully you heard yourself somewhere in there.
Yeah, okay, so I love that. That was so expertly done. That was so
Oh,
perfect.
cute.
A question that came up for me when I was reading your book, and I'm wondering if you could kind of like dig into a little bit now, is it's probably two types that get confused maybe a lot, or maybe it's just me. But in trying to think about if Justin is truly a nine with a wing one, which is what I'm 99.9% sure he is,
Yeah.
how do we tell the difference between peacemakers and helpers? Because I
That
feel like
is a
those
great
could get
question.
kind of confused. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think a way to assess is to look at their core questions. And twos often feel very rejected and they will reject others before they get rejected. They're part of the rejection triad, actually, if we were to dig really far in. And so nines don't feel heard sometimes, and they do feel that injustice sometimes rising up, but they feel very content once they are heard and they're ready to step
Mm,
in, where it's just a little more complex with twos in terms of like, they're going to wonder all the time, do you really like me? Am I really lovable?
mm.
And I think with nines, it's going to be more of a checking out, whereas a two will try to manipulate to get that love. Let's say they feel like
Okay.
they aren't loved. Well, they know that in order to survive, one needs love. So they will go seek it out, continue to check in, maybe reject somebody and play the game a bit. Whereas a nine will say, oh, you don't love me? I'm going back in my turtle shell, or I'm going to go
Mm,
over here with somebody else, and they will be a
yeah.
bit more skeptical. They might quiet their voices down. And there's so many more things we could talk about. That's a starting point. Does that help you to
Yeah.
differentiate a bit?
Yeah, he's definitely a 9.
You knew.
No, I mean, he is such a helper. He's like his love
Mm,
language for sure is acts of service,
yeah.
but I think it's more the 9. I don't think there's like a manipulative bone in his body. So, okay, all right. Well, so okay, here's one more kind of like just general practical question before we even dig in. I've heard the Enneagram described as it's not your true self necessarily. It's the mask you put on when you were little, when you first learned from the world, this is who you have to be in
Mm,
order to be loved. Do you agree with that assessment? Is the goal of the Enneagram to actually take off the mask of being a 4 or a 3 or what have you? Like, just walk
mhm.
us through the mask aspect.
Yeah, well, I think that the space of your type, say you really hear yourself in one of the types, we don't want it to be limiting. And I think what can happen is that you can start to wear a mask if you think that's the only part of you. And of course, analogies always fall a bit short, but really that would be the issue is if you said, I've learned I'm a six, that's who I am, that's all I am. There's no wing, there's no like little bit of six wing seven or six wing five, the types around you. I'm not going to look
Okay.
into any other paths of growth or excavation. That would be the concern because I do think that the if you really get into Enneagram, which you probably have, like you said here, I've heard you talk about it on your show and
Mhm.
otherwise outside of your show. And I think that a lot of us do the journey on learning our arrow movements in the Enneagram, which you can find at
Mhm.
Enneagram Institute very easily. You can see what other types you relate to. When we
Mm.
do that work, we start to see we have other types, and that would just already there help somebody to take off the mask of only their type. And there is a
Right.
theory that one of our arrows, our arrow to health, it's called the soul child theory, is our actual type. However, I do think that we are really born with our temperament as well. I think that may be one iteration we lost along the way. So look at those arrows, look at those wings for more expansiveness and perhaps pieces you lost. But your type, I really do believe, is also meant to be. And I'll give you a really quick example. I'm a seven, and in my baby book, you might remember me saying just now, sevens are enthusiastic and joyful. In my baby book, my mom has written, baby Christa is so joyful. She is always happy. She is such a happy baby. And that really helps me when I'm struggling to remember this is my heritage. Just because I have to learn what I don't want to do as a seven, there is also a big part of me that has always been a seven.
Love that. Okay, so let's now get into the the Enneagram in marriage, and what you call the Enneagram glow. How do you define the Enneagram glow?
I think of it as a romantic overlay of relationship attachment. And for those who just felt like I nerded out too much, basically your type plus your partner's type equals its own beautiful new hue. You each have a light
Mm,
you cast in the world. And so you know that. You're like, I'm a helper, I'm a giver. And like, we all want to be the best, right? No one wants to be that scattered seven or a manipulative two. We want to be the best of our types. That's the goal, and shining like Christ. And so when we shine with our partners in their particular way plus our particular way, it's a very nuanced way of helping the world. And it's really been fun to
mm,
walk couples through not just their shady parts, which of course they come to me as a marriage specialist with all the time, every day, but also once we get them past that a bit and able to be refreshed, to say, how are you guys going to hit Eric Erickson's stages of generativity versus stagnation? How are you going to hit Abraham Maslow's self-actualization together so that you can sometimes, not always, not when we're sick, etc., but be on the top of the mountain together and giving, right? And so how are you going to do that with your glow? That's what the glow is.
interesting, and I also wrote in the notes, it's an idea that we cast both light and shadows
Oh,
as a
yes.
couple. Yeah, so talk about that.
Yes. Ooh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah. So you guys also have blind spots together. So sometimes your two types together will be so fired up about reactivity, or you're both such withdrawing types. Whatever it is, you got to just spend time marinating in the good and the bad of your types together. And of course, somebody like me or
Mm,
Mary can help you with that, but it's really valuable because then you begin to see, like we did, for instance, that we had a bit of a judgmental overlay. And it
mm,
really helped us by the time we got to raising our kids, especially kid two and three. We were much less judgmental, but we really started off with just this edge of like superiority. We're both idealists. And it just helped us to see like we were shining stars in our family, helping all of our nieces and nephews. And then as the nieces and nephews got older, they're like, as we get older, you guys are kind of bossy and stuff. Like it just helped us to be like our nine nephew. He was not a person of faith. He was just like, I don't want to go to church. I don't want to do things. And we were like, that's a good should. You should do that. And it's like, you've got to let people evolve to who they are too. So Wes and Krista had to learn that with our shadows.
yeah, okay, so then walk us through well, even before we get into that, I was gonna say walk us through kind of the steps of the stages of the Enneagram Glow, but before we even get there, something that you wrote in the book that surprised me a little bit actually, but I think it's fine, is that it's important to note there are no perfect pairings within the Enneagram system. Because 'cause I've been over here thinking that we were the perfect pairing.
Adorable.
Um, no, but I think that is so interesting. There are no
Mm.
pairs that are more or less compatible than other pairs. Any type can work well with any other type. There are no bad pairings. There's no wrong type. That's
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like we're all unique. We all have a certain way of shining, whether it's generational, cultural,
Mm,
the ways that we're using our Enneagram personality types. Even two threes are different from two other threes. There's going to be some similarities, but
mm,
there's going to be so many beautiful things that each of you bring. It's an endless list. So we don't ever want to stop looking at all the good you could bring together, but there's also shadows everybody can bring together. And each of our vices are equally awful. So, yeah, I think we're all on the same page there, but there are beautiful pieces of the Enneagram that when I do see them together, I'll be like, that's adorable. And quite honestly, the four and the nine is one of my favorite spaces. I think I mentioned to you, I'm raising two of my kids being fours and nines. It's like, it's kind of easy sometimes compared to some of the others. I know you would say probably
yeah.
it's hard too, but like I see the easy part of that.
Mm, right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's like they call the 9 the, like, sweetheart of the
Yeah,
Enneagram, right? So, I
exactly.
definitely got lucky there for sure.
Aw, but you
And
too, because you make room for the
yeah.
nine's voice with your 4.
That's right. That's right, yes. The 9s are the sweethearts until they don't feel heard. And then it's
Exactly.
like, it's on, it's on. Okay, good, good, good. Let's talk about this. Before we move on to the stages, I wanna linger for just a second. I really love you mentioned that, you mentioned the hue that you create, and there's a part in the book where you use that metaphor of, like, almost thinking about like if we're primary colors,
Yeah.
the secondary colors we make, like there's the yellow, which could turn into orange or green, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of,
Mhm.
I'm like,
Yep.
that's right, right?
Yeah.
Or like the red, which could turn into purple
Yeah.
or orange.
Yeah.
Anyway, you get
Mhm.
the idea.
I do.
And
Yep.
so like when those colors combine, they are making a new hue in the world. But I also really love this analogy about the chemistry. You say, think about each person in a relationship as an element in a chemistry experiment. Carl Jung said the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction at all, both are transformed. I thought that was beautiful. And you say, in fact, each couple, whatever their personality types are, create their own unique chemistry together as the elements of each person's essence and personality combine. They blend their gifts and traits like threads of a tapestry interwoven, exposing and grafting in shades and patterns that were not seen in each person individually before. And that I want you to just spend some time talking about like how important marriage then becomes in creating what I wrote in the notes as whole humans. I don't know if you would call it
Yeah.
that or not, but just this idea that we become more integrated because we're interacting with other types.
Thank you for stopping and pausing there. I love that type 4 gift of doing that. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to name that when we engage with other people also made in God's image, we are allowing that creativity and blessing of them to fall on us. We know that iron sharpens iron. We know that we're better together. We're seeing the loneliness studies that it's worse than a pack of cigarettes a day to have loneliness. And yet, when we get so far into that mask or that box of like, no, I'm an 8 and I'm only an 8 and I'm always going to be, and I'm not going to let influence of others or whatever, 7, 2, it's so much healthier when we say, no, of course my partner's going to rub off on me and their gifts. That's something we always know. I always think of this couple I knew who said, oh, you know what? I hate being girly, like I'm a tomboy. And then later in her life, she started to wear pink and just noticed, like, I'm allowed to wear pink. Like, I'm allowed to own this part of me too. And her husband gave her permission. He's like, of course, like, I loved you when you weren't, but like, I want to honor the fact that you're allowed to wear whatever color you like. And in that way, just like the colors analogy of the Enneagram, like even if you are a 4, you're allowed to look at type 9. You're allowed to say,
Mm,
my partner's a 9. What am I learning from him over the years? Hopefully something. And I noticed when I
yeah.
recently took Ian Cron's test, the type 1 came up for me pretty close to my 7. And I said to
Mm,
myself, wow, my husband's a 1. And maybe he
wow.
is rubbing off on me more than I thought.
Hmm,
I tend to be
wow.
pretty critical of my own one space, and I realized that may be my one being critical because ones can be critical. So it's really beautiful to know that we can learn from each other so much that I bet you at times people have seen your peaceful presence and thought you were a 9 because you're so peaceful, and I bet Justin's been part of that.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. That's interesting. Speaking of Ian Cron, I had him on the podcast one of the times I had him on, and he said, people will often ask me what Enneagram type I think Jesus was. And his answer was that Jesus would be the white space in between
Oh,
all of the different types.
yeah.
Isn't that
Ooh, that's
beautiful? And that the
beautiful.
more we become like Jesus, the more we move to the
Mm,
white space and
yeah.
we can then interact and learn from and relate to all the different types.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. He's like the symphony running through it all. If we were music
Yeah.
notes too, which I was going to give you that analogy too, because I do think that we're like the flats and the sharps are like the wings and the notes. It's just, I've heard other people use these analogies too, and I've not heard that one about the white space, and that's just beautiful.
Ian Cron.
I
There you
know,
go.
right?
I love it. Okay, so now I'm ready for you to tell me and tell us about the stages that we go through in a marriage for the Enneagram Glow. That there are one, two, three, four, five, six, maybe. You tell me,
Yes.
how many stages are there?
Well, there's 5 for most of us, and some of us will even enter that 6th space. So basically,
Okay.
it's like the sixth sense. No, I'm just joking, but like the first part we all go through is the honeymoon phase, and that is just so beautiful
Mm,
and glowy and dewy and just like, oh my gosh, I'm in new love. And the time I write in my book about how I I was, Mom, if Wes calls when I'm in the shower, get me out of the shower. And she's like, thank God she didn't, because that would have been so embarrassing to look back on. But it's that moment of desperate love and anticipation. The
Mm.
Notebook, Can't Keep My Hands Off You. And it can look different for every different couple, but it's the happy early moments. And then we go into the second stage, which is the healing phase, which is all about when we actually notice our partners have helped us. Like Wes helped me to focus and concentrate in a way I hadn't done since I was younger. And my teachers had loved that about me and put me in the gifted program. But by the time I was a partying 7 in high school, I forgot about that. And I had been negated by friends too. They're like, you're just silly. And then he's like, no, I see something. I'm going to bring that light out in you. And he even yelled at my in front of one of our math classes and said, like, get her focusing. And then we also had, as your marriage, as you're thinking about your friends, it doesn't have to, if you're unmarried, it could be that your friends allow this in your life, but a family, but I also helped him to know you're allowed to rest. You are so guilt ridden
Mm.
all the time in your critical one space. You are allowed to take a break. You are worthy and loved, even when you're not serving everyone and just people pleasing. And that's a message that I still carry to him today. That one is a very powerful space, but that healing is so essential for our marriages. And once in a while, he'll tell me, girl, go have fun in a 7. Don't you forget you're a 7. So we still can do that ongoing. These stages are just like the stages of grief. Sometimes they overlap. But the next stage after that is a stage almost every couple will hit. And that's also the shadows and shade. We call it throwing shade. And it's basically when you and your partner are saying, you know what, I remember that you annoy me. I'm remembering your shadows. I'm forgetting that you helped me to be who I am and where I got to today. I'm forgetting that within all my mountain climbing here at the top, you were part of it all. We chased each other around. We picked each other up off the floor. We worked our butts off together. And no, I'm just here on my own accord, and that's the fundamental
Mm.
attribution error that we all do sometimes of I'm the healthier spouse. You're the one who has problems or more
Yeah.
problems. When I'm tired, it's because I am tired. And that's why I was cranky. When you're tired, it's because you have a bad work ethic. It's because you don't have good, genetics, whatever it is. We're always looking at ourselves with more positivity when we get to that moment.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so that is the shadows shade. And the hope is that the next stage would bring the healing. And that is the stage of immersion. Some people, however, pause right here. And it's almost like that Enneagram dark night of the soul space that there's a pause and some people actually turn the lights all the way out there. It's not just shadows and shade, it's darkness. And it's like, we're done. And you see that half of the couples are divorcing. It's like, there is no healing. This is going to be the end. And so for some of us, though, we will do that darkness. And the hope is that we will allow ourselves to find the light again, that we will say, we are in the darkness. We're going to own it. This marriage is dead. We need to resurrect. We need to
Mm.
have that immersion time where we do our work, where we heal. Could be that you have a spiritual director help you through this, or a counselor or coach. It could be that it's a pastor. It's not going to be done in loneliness and isolation. I'll tell you that much. That's where, as we know
Mm.
from Ian Cron's work, that addiction comes in. So
Right. So
yeah.
is it called immersion because you get immersed in each other again, or because you get immersed in the process? What is the immersion
The
part?
immersion, thank you so much for that clarification, is immersing in the work. It's immersing
Got it.
in your beautiful hues again, but it's really just an
Mm.
immersion in kind of mixing back into work that you perhaps had done skimming of earlier seasons, but now it's a desperate immersion. Like I need almost to be rebaptized into so I need to find my way through the darkness back into the light. So you immerse yourself down. You're willing to do this hard work, which I know, Mary, you're so good at. The rest of us struggle with going down into the depths. And so you're
I'm
probably
like,
more
"Yeah, bring
comfortable.
on the depths."
Exactly. And we're all like terrified, like, what? I have to talk about my feelings without getting reactive or without withdrawing. And those are the spaces where we can really find this honor for each other again and say, oh, wow, I'm starting to remember how your day went. I'm starting to remember how your life went, all the hard things you've walked through too. And I'm starting to remember, yeah, that we're all human. And then you come back up for the final stages of finding your 2.0 together. Like, yes, we did our work and we're ongoing doing our work. And then that last stage I would say you're reaching for is your afterglow of like, wow, like we really did reach the top of the mountain and we love being here. We don't get to be here all the time, but we can see the light again. We can see all the light we've shared over generations. We can see the work we're still doing, and we can take a deep breath and honor the work we've done and that we're still doing.
Is the 2.0 kind of like a second honeymoon phase? And the thing I'm specifically interested in is, the first version, the glow, the original glow, the shine, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
That's kind of that, like, it's all chemistry, it's all chemical in the brain kinda thing. It's not that, like, lasting love. There's, like, a Greek word for it I can't think of right now, but romantic love, essentially.
Yeah.
And then so is the 2.0 like a return to romantic love, but somehow deeper? Or is it like, no, now you're really settling into that, like, Fronimos,
Oh,
friendship love?
yeah, I think that you're allowing yourself both, and that's the most beautiful part is that
Hmm,
you're defying the Robert Frost poem that says, your nature's first screen is gold that I write in the book about. Like, you can only hold the beauty in the early years. It's challenging that directly and saying, "No, we can have our sexual instinct," which I talk about. We can invite newness and spontaneity. We can invite attraction in different ways. We can enjoy some of the old things, but some of them will be new, and there will be a
mm,
new glow over us, and it will be deeper and richer hues. So you're
hmm,
going to see the colors are there and the glow is bright again, but it is a richer, deeper glow that includes friendship and often
hmm.
absolutely the eros as well of romantic
Yep,
love. And when I've
Eros,
seen
that's it.
couples try to bypass that, it doesn't work because they end up just being roommates and friends. So I do think
Hmm,
that's a great question that you asked. And that 2.0 is a space of learning how do we really work with
hmm.
each other's types. And that's also where my book comes in of helping people to see exactly how you can work
Yeah,
with people of other types because
right.
there has to be a method to learn, right? You can't just say, we just idealistically said, oh, we just cried for a bit and now we're here.
Right. Part of this work, I don't know which stage this really shows up in. Maybe it's the 2.0 or the immersion, probably immersion, is the coming face to face with our own weaknesses. You mentioned the availability bias, which I'm just going to read here about. We believe that we have reasons we act certain ways, so we are deserving of grace. We think our spouse messes up because they're not as intrinsically healthy as we are. In most of us, there's an unspoken statement that although we ourselves can't help but act out in maladaptive, deeply rooted ways, our partner can and should do better with their hardships. And then going along with that, many of my personality qualities that had formerly been my pride and joy were pieces of myself that hurt others. Now I was embarrassed. This is often the initial response for someone who finds out more about their Enneagram type and is hit with the hardest aspects of it. So is that sort of in the immersion stage where we start to realize, like, maybe they are not the only annoying ones,
Yeah.
you know, that we too have our own annoying ways?
Absolutely, because it's not gonna hit us as much in the healing phase or that early glow especially. By the time we've reached the afterglow in 2.0, etcetera, we know and we're humbled because we realize that we're all equal in Christ and that everyone has gifts, everyone has areas of growth. And so when we're doing that immersion work, we come to discover we have a shadow as well. And it's so important that we make amends for that with each other and with the others we've hurt in the world. I've talked to my type 4 daughter about that quite a bit, actually, because she was hurt. As I said, we were a bit more judgy and self righteous in our earliest years of parenting and being aunts and uncles. And I've said to her, something that was part of your development was me being too harsh with you. And I want
Hmm,
you to know that I was carrying the burden of my mother's schizophrenia. I was raising little baby
wow.
girls, and I was also she was a 4 in very, very high emotions, and I didn't know what to do with that, and I was worried about that. What do I do? And so I was also working with all these teen girls cutting, and you can see my scattered type 7 running all over trying to chase after my mom who's in a diaper, who's running away with my toddler type 4, trying to answer my calls with my crisis girls, and being too hard on poor baby Hannah, like, Hannah, get over here, and just like, girl, like, that was my shadow. Like, I needed to trust more. I needed to let go of more things. I needed to set more boundaries instead of being such a difficult, hard on you person. And I think Wes and I have realized our own journeys there as well. But that's just one example of me learning, oh my gosh, that's the shadow of the 7. is sort of
Mm,
looking at that piece. What happens when you're running too hard and too fast? You can be really mean to others.
mhm. Gosh, that's good. That's so good. Let's kind of talk about the types now as they are in different stages. Well, I'll just list them out: relational health, relational stress, relational dysfunction. And you in the book go in, depth for each type about how each type shows up in those different places. One question I had right off the bat is, and then you can tell us a little bit more about what those even are, is for self-preservation types like I am, like I've realized that I'm a self-preservation 4 who tends to show up like a 3 to achieve into safety. As I move into relational stress and even relational dysfunction, will I start to show up more like my masking sort of self-pres type? Like, will I look more like a 3 the more in stress or dysfunction I get? Or will I look more like a 4?
I think you'll look like the worst of both. So,
Oh, good.
unfortunately,
Awesome.
it's like when we're just stressed out, we also clamp down on our self-preserving, or if we're, for those who aren't as familiar with instincts, you're either self-preserving or you're sexual one-to-one, or you're socially based for your survival needs. And so you're going to be trying to get more of your own physical needs met, and trying to just make sure you're healthy and secure. You're going to try to make sure that your 4 has plenty of time to do the melancholy thinking. You're going to be looking at your 3 on how you can achieve even without thinking about how does this affect others. So those things are not trying to be evil. It's like, I want to achieve so that I can get love. I want to figure it out so I can be unique and special and loved as a 4. I want to be safe. It's all good desires, but they're so extreme when we just buckle down and we forget our other better self-soothing and ways that we know we need to open up to really get healthy. Like, this is where faith comes in. This is where pausing and deep breaths and loving others comes in, and resting. When we do that instead of going to all these spaces we just talked about, then we aren't as likely to head down to the worst alleys of each of those spaces, the 3, the 4, the instinct.
Got it. Will you just talk a little bit about relational health, relational stress, and relational dysfunction? Is it a continuum or are
Yeah.
they 3 distinct?
They're definitely on a continuum, because all of us on any given day might find ourselves in any of the levels where you might say, today as a type 6, I had a part of the day where I was really worried and clamped down, but then I remembered my tools and I allowed myself to take my Ollie gummy from Target, or, which may be
Mm,
the calm gummy or something, or maybe they went on a jog and they found less intensity there, or they allowed themselves time in their worry space where they gave 15 minutes to allow themselves to worry and to process with their partner. And they found themselves really moving way back up to where they were the healthiest version of the 6. And they were literally not even just this moderate middle place, but very healthy. So I want everyone listening to know you have health accessible to you each day as you take care of yourself spiritually, emotionally, physically. But you can also find seasons where you're like, nope, I'm not healthy. And I keep heading back down to the bottom of that continuum. And it's not that I want anyone to feel shamed there. It's just, I wanted to write that part of the book because I had a lot of clients actually, and I'm sure I did it too, but bragging to me about what they were like. And it was usually the like least healthy version of themselves. And so I wanted to spell it out relationally, because I knew that Enneagram Institute does a beautiful job of spelling it out for all of us in in an individual way, but we're not made in a vacuum. We're in relationship. So I wanted to let people know, if you're a type 7 like me, for instance, and I hear this from a lot of 7s, especially men, because they are not like nursing a baby actually helped me to calm down a bit, because I was the one who was kind of like, I need to do this. This is the survival of my child, technically. Could have done other things, but I was needed there more as a mother. But a lot of 7 dads will say, I'm going on a jog, and I'm not just jogging, I'm going off for 20 miles. And so they were thinking, this is me healthy because I'm jogging 20 miles. But their partner was like, this is you scattered. You have a million things to do at home. You're not here with us. And so I wanted people to see, what does it look like relationally when you're checked out,
mm.
when you're checked in, when you're at an average level. So I tried to create the relational scale.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. I wanna talk about generational layering because we're sharing a little bit about your story growing up, but your also story as an adult child with your mom. And also with your dad, you talk in the book about this idea of generational layering. We must not imagine that these family patterns are from just one generation back, but from many, many generations in most cases. And that for you, you inherited a protective layering. In Underestimated, we talk a lot about this idea of, kind of returning to chaos because it feels familiar, and familiar equals comfortable, and comfortable equals safe.
Mhm.
And like not even realizing we're doing it, or like the opposite of like wanting to be the break in the family chains, but we keep ending up places we don't want to be. So just talk a little bit about that generational layering, how we can even begin to unpack that of just like, do you think of those as like gauzy layers on top of the hue, or like what's the metaphor for us to think about there?
Mm.
And then we're talking about unpacking 2 different
Mm.
generations, and then
Yeah.
really 4 and then
Yeah.
8 and then so on.
Yeah.
It multiplies quickly.
Yeah, a metaphor I've been using for this is with my couples, I often do use the mountain analogy that I mentioned briefly earlier, thinking about Abraham Maslow. But another
Mm.
metaphor I've come to realize that works with couples is trees. I love trees. I'm a big Tolkien person, so the Ents are very attractive to me in terms of just thinking about the life within even little seeds all the way up to the big tree. And I think of a couple as each having their own root system, and that would be their ancestry, right? The roots of their tree. Some of us have the bigger, better roots. Some of us have very weak roots. Our just families are new and it's easier to push us down, and we have to get fortification. We have to have even more help because we're not as strong or solid yet. And we know that's also the same with younger trees. And I think of Tolkien's quote, deep roots are not, I'm gonna get it wrong a little bit, but deep roots are not hurt or touched by the frost. And it's just the idea that we wanna continue to build deep roots, not only near each other, but even intertwine some of those roots as we create family systems of our own. So we know that neighboring trees actually do connect that way. And then the self-preserving instinct that I talked about with my family, it was so strong because there were immigrants coming over from Croatia and they were the last on the totem pole. And so there's a sense of we have to grow our families or there will be nothing. And it's like this is
Yeah.
the groundwork before you go on the mountain hike where you have to get your supplies, or the tree has this trunk that all the everything gets carried to the top through that system. And so you have to have survival first. Every couple
Mm.
does. So whenever you're thinking about type, you could think, okay, well, we're this type or that type. And that's true, but I could be a self preserving 7 or a self preserving 4. These traits that I'm talking about, ancestral wise, often come into these 3 instincts instead of your type. And so the self preserving layer we talked about. And then I would say, once you get into the branches and you start branching off, that's your sexual instinct. If you want to think about growing fruit, being having some sort of creative fertility. It could be writing a book or having a baby or something in that nature, but you're creating with that instinct. And so sometimes you intertwine, like I said, with the next tree over. But the truth is, you're doing that on your own too. It doesn't have to be just for couples. And then we also have that space of actually allowing others in and allowing people to grab that fruit and our social instinct to see what we've made, to behold the beauty of our creation. And that's where we share in that canopy of the covering of the forest, the social protections that we all need and want. And so some of us will really love that top part where we're like, my husband, he's such a social guy. He's, how can we get everyone to be protected? How can we help everybody?
Mm.
The bigger, the better at the top. But the truth is, if you don't have solid roots at the bottom and you don't have good self care at the bottom, and if you don't have good relational, we've all seen, especially in the church, these pastors or well meaning people who are serving all day long, and then their family life goes to heck because they haven't been doing the deeper work. So each of those instincts, self preserving, sexual, and social, are all extremely important to you, just as important as the Enneagram type. And for me in my marriage work, that'll be where my next book focuses. This is just every bit as relevant to talk about. So thanks for giving us that opportunity. And lastly, to just add to that, often we do get that from our families of origin who help us. Like my husband had to hear, if you don't have good social, what if you don't have good one-to-one at home? What if you don't have good self-care? He often didn't, like you, Mary, he had some Appalachia roots that were very difficult, and he didn't often have food. And sometimes people were doing drugs and he had to fend for himself, and he didn't have safe one-to-one. So for him, social was the lifeline. So we do need to honor, what did we learn from our past? What can we carry forward? And hopefully we'll all want a balance of all three instincts as we get healthier.
Wow, that's so good. Do you have any advice, for the, married people listening or the people who are gonna take this to their spouse, and the temptation is to be like, "You have some generational layering we need to talk about." Like, how
Yeah.
one of the gifts of this is that we can draw
Yeah.
attention to each other's strengths and weaknesses. So what's a good way of, especially when that seems like extra, tender ground to say, like, this is your, not just you, this is your whole family."
Yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think we wanna start with complimenting that our partners have survived to this moment with that instinct, and we don't wanna change their instinct, and that's the first thing we wanna do is say, "That is bad, mine is better, and so you need to learn more from me. Look how I survived." And the truth is you're both here, you both survived, so learning from them is huge. Most people, about 80% of couples that I've surveyed, do find a partner of a differing instinct, and it's okay when you don't, because then you are running on that same track and you can do things within that. But otherwise, you're actually helping each other with blind spots, and you can have good conversations, really rich conversations about it that are very brave and hard to have. So I want to encourage you to have them, but not in the way of demanding, just in the way of curiosity. Like, wow, Wes, like, thank you for showing me how good healthy social would be. Whereas I was with my clique, but to this day, he helps to remind me to include everybody. And I always
Mm,
say, that's such a challenge for me. That's not my instinct, but I really appreciate that you do that for us. And I think that
yeah.
allowing me to see that versus, oh, the reason you evolved this way is because things were so bad, I'm able to say, you found a really cool path to survival. Thanks for teaching it to me. Also, I want to let you know when I feel like we need to put the brakes on. And he does the same thing for me when I get overly one-to-one or self-pres, because I tend to lean toward those more. Even Ian Cron's new test said that I'm social. So it was very interesting to see how my husband had rubbed off on me over the years.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I know my roots and I will go back to those other two. And my husband said the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Okay, let's use that as a really good chance to pivot into the triads. I just want to kind of get like a little bit of a brief overview of those. That there is a head, a heart, and body triads, that the 9 types are divided into. And so just walk us through what we need to know about the triads and how they influence our type.
Yes. Well, our twos, threes, and fours that we mentioned, personality types, they are heart types. And so that's right where you fall in. And they love to
Yeah.
love and they love to be loved. And it's so important if you're married to somebody in that space or you're best friends with somebody in that space that you use that language, that you allow them to know how much you love them and find out what their love languages are so they can feel your love. It's just important. This is a group that also longs for time together with their loved ones. They bask in just sheer time so that they know that there's going to be priority of this relationship time. And so you can't get around that by saying like, "Oh, I'm going to keep you safe or I'm going to do the right thing." They're like, "I want time. We're here. We've learned that humans don't survive without relationships." So just know that this is a gift they bring to all of us, is truly relating and being with when they're healthy. We've seen twos, threes, and fours who can't do that for various reasons when they're healthy. Now, five, sixes, and sevens, these are thinkers. These are people who can get very anxious and people who are good at planning and security, but they really want to feel safe with you too. They don't want you to make them feel like there's not a safety plan involved. They don't want you to manipulate them or tell them that
Hmm.
something's right when they know it doesn't feel safe. Because even if safety feels like different for a type 7 than a type 5, they all long for that. And they're all going to be using their mind first to get through problems. So you can't really do a bypass. You have to let them be who they are, process the way they do, and then help them from there. And they can learn from you if you're a heart type or the last type we'll talk about. But you also, again, like the heart type, let them be who they are, let them question, let them find their healthy planning. And hopefully, in their health, they will also learn some faith and letting go too. And then the last grouping, which I think is our biggest group, perhaps, if we were to count types, is the eights, nines, and ones. And this is our body types. We can also call them gut types, but these are the people who love to do the right thing. That means the most to them. And that for them looks like a point of justice, whatever they care deeply about and believe in. They really want others to respect that and learn from them. They have a lot to teach about doing the right thing with integrity. And yes, even our nines care deeply about certain aspects of things, even if they're peaceful. They do want to do the right thing. They want to use their gift of peace to do good in the world. And so for them, doing what is good and right does trump all. It does, matter about love. It does matter about safety, but they're willing to put their life on the line for others. And it's just so beautiful. So I love all those triads. I'm so glad you brought them up.
Yeah, you say when we look at the flow and glow of our relationship as we interchange intelligence, so the triads are also called centers of intelligence. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. We're open to using even more of ourselves. When we are leaning into one another to share our gifts with an awareness of our blind spots, we can use our gifts with synergy, the extra energy, power, success, etc., that is achieved by two or more people working together instead of on their own. And you talk about so like I just wrote in my notes because I found it very interesting that the heart triad in particular has a gift of reading others intuitively. So that super tracks
Yeah.
for
Yes.
me.
I love that for you.
On a totally separate
Oh,
personality test, the INFJ, from the Myers-Briggs is known for the meme, "Get away from me, you smell like bad intentions."
I love that. Yeah.
So that super tracks.
Oh, that's
But
great.
you mentioned a few times in that section talking about the body triad. I don't know if it's specific to the body triad or not, but this idea of doing body work. There's a time when you said you were telling, like, a story about you and Wes, and you said, like, "We did the body work." Um, what is that? What does it look like to do body work?
Yeah, it looks like them generating something that will help them to allow themselves to digest the anger and frustration that can come up when
Mm,
justice is not served and
okay.
justice the way they see it, right? And of course, part of the release is having good roots in Christ so that you can allow some healing to just take place that way to go, oh my gosh, like, thank you, God, that you know more than me, that you are the ultimate justice bringer. But another part of that is God put us in actual bodies, and these body types tend to store their frustration in their bodies. So, a massage is a great example of allowing for body work. Going for a brisk walk is another great example because when these individuals begin to digest all that extra anger, it's not as likely to come out like a Mount Vesuvius explosion. It's much more likely to, oh, I'm starting to think through what I need to do. I'm starting to let God have it. I'm starting to process. And others would say, oh, acupuncture or my Pilates routine. And so I just want people to be even aware that something as brief as a nap or stretching could constitute body work, but it's going to be different for everyone. Great question.
All right. Well, here's a good bookend for this conversation. I feel like we started off by you just giving us an overview of the 9 types, and you really, like, talked about things that they have as strengths, but there are also these vices, that each type has. So maybe kinda give us, because this whole episode is about self-awareness of strengths and weaknesses to show up better and shine brighter in the world. So what are the vices of each of the types, just in an overview sort of way?
Yeah. So vices are how each type has an emotional depth that is unhealthy. Another word for vice in the Christian narrative is sin. And another way you'll hear it spoken of is passion. And it's just either way, it's not the passion of like sexual passion, it's the thing I get lost in emotionally. And so each of the type has their own passion, vice, or sin that is particular to them. And it doesn't mean that all of us, unfortunately, we can all struggle with all of them, but it's a pet sin. And so it's, got its root in the seven deadly sins you've heard about from some of the church fathers, but it's really way that each of these types has of engaging with sin most particularly. It's the little lies we tell ourselves, this will make me feel better. And I talk about
Mm.
all 9 of them in the book, but it's a really important tool to look at because often if you miss that piece, like one of my clients recently said to me, okay, I've learned all about the types. What if we're just too different? But they weren't realizing they were looking at their vice as though it was a blessing and a gift. and they didn't realize this is not you at your best. This is actually
Right.
hurting you. Even if you were with a different partner, it would carry over and hurt them too. This is part of your work to do. So I just think that's really important for us all to know that we probably know our pet sin anyway, but just it's helpful to hear how does it look on an Enneagram lens if you're fuzzy, or let's say you're in your availability bias or fundamental attribution error. Those two words are synonymous to say, I think I'm a little bit better than my
Right.
partner. Just that little
Right.
reminder, oh, wait, maybe I have stuff too.
Right. Like you said, you go into it in depth in the book. Could we even do just like the one word vice for each type? Um,
Yeah, we could
yeah.
do the one
Do you
word.
know them? Do you know them
I
off the
should
top
know
of your
them off
head?
the top of my head. Let me go ahead and go through them. There's a fixation too. So just to clarify, I do put that in the book too, and that's the
Yeah.
mental issue that
Mm,
each type has. This
okay.
is the emotional issue. And I know that can sound confusing, but I think we all know we have our feelings and emotions, and then we also have negative thoughts. So we'll just go through the vice here. But for the one, the mental vice they get stuck in is anger. And it could look like rage. And for two, the mental vice they can get stuck in is pride. And for threes, it's going to be vanity. For fours, it's going to be melancholy or feeling envy, actually, even more than the melancholy. The melancholy is more the thoughts. For the fives, it's going to be avarice. It's going to be, I have to have my greed, I can't give. For the sixes, it's going to be fear. For the sevens, it's going to be gluttony. For the eights, it's going to be lust. And for the nines, it's going to be something, it's not the actual slovenly or sloth. It's more about mental sloth, not thinking about anything, just kind of checking out. So those
Yeah.
would be our traps emotionally, what happens to us.
Love it. All right. Well, if you are, thinking about talking to somebody who's listening to this all along and they're, whether they're using this just to work on themselves, maybe they're single or what have you, or it is about them showing up in their marriage and not, playing small with what the two of them can do in the world. What are any final parting thoughts you want to say to somebody, especially to the couples who might be hitting their first shadows and throwing shade stage?
Oh, that's such a good question. I want to encourage you not to give up. You are worth this work. You are worth taking time. You are going to be
Mm,
having all kinds of challenges in your life, and allowing yourself to pause, to breathe, to rest along the trail, along the pilgrim's progress of life is essential. Allowing yourself to ask for help with friends that you can trust and figuring out who those people are. And when you find people who stab you in the back or hurt you, know that they're probably walking a dark journey of their own, but there's somebody else who can be a helper, who can be an encourager in your life. Find those people. Don't let the bad situations take you away from the fact that somebody is going to be out there for you. There's always light and there's always darkness. So we need to keep finding the light. You're worth it to find that light and to find it together, because you and your partner both have gifts from God, and you don't have to feel like I have to start over. We hurt each other. Know that that's a
mm,
part of life and growing up together. And so allowing yourself to choose forgiveness will be part of it. Doing your own work and noticing your own vice or sin will be part of it. Rest will be part of it. Allowing
mm.
in some faith. So those are several pieces to remember when you feel like you're hitting those walls.
Love it, love it. Well, Krista, I know that they are gonna want a lot more of you. We have, like I said, barely even scratched the surface of what you go in the book. I have been absolutely devouring it. I love it. It's so good. Where can they find you, this book, any resources you want them to know about? Let them know about all the things.
Thank you so much. This has been such a joy and an honor to get to talk about this on your beautiful
Yeah.
platform. And they can find everything of mine at enneagramandmarriage.com. I really try to share from the book, from my podcast. I try to share from my heart. Even though that's challenging for me as a seven, I try to do it as best as I can. I try to be very real with you in those resources so that I'm on the journey with you. And I have lots of freebies there if you join my email list. And the book is also at amazon.com. I have it right here for those who are
Yeah.
perhaps watching, but it's the Enneagram and Marriage, your guide to thriving together in your unique pairing. And I have a little treatment plan at the end of the book for every single one of the 45 pairings. So if you're just wondering, how would a 3 and a 6 get along? I have a whole way of showing you how you shine together, how you heal together, and often right where you get stuck and right where you can do some very specific repairing together. So you do get some extra nuggets in here as well.
So good, so good. And what are you on who are you on Instagram? Is it Enneagram and Marriage on
Yes,
Instagram as
and I
well?
do spend
Yeah,
a lot of time at Instagram, so thank you for bringing that up too.
yeah.
And also make sure you write to us on our contact page if you get the book, because I also have a bonus hidden chapter, which is all about
Fun.
each pairings type in their sexual relationship as well in marriage, because that's a part that the publisher didn't have room for, but we knew that so many couples struggled in this area, so we have lots for you. Just send us, I want the bonus chapter, and we'll send you that too.
Amazing. All right, friends, the book is The Enneagram in Marriage, Your Guide to Thriving Together in Your Unique Pairing. It is out now everywhere books are sold. Go get this in your hands. Make sure you follow Christa. Go grab that bonus secret chapter. And until next time, friends, this is the Mary Morant Show, and welcome to your underestimated season.